GL 650 presents It's Your Money, an up-close and personal look at your finances. Here's your host, Fred Snyder.
Up in the morning and out to school.
Okay, we are back. And let me start off by wishing everybody out there a happy new year. And what is your New Year's resolution? Let's talk about that. What are you going to do different this year from what you did last year when it comes to your money? And remember, it's only your money if you don't spend it. So you have to keep a part of everything you earn. And on this show, we talk about keeping money. It's not really about how much you make that counts, it's how much you keep. So you say you get a return of 5%. But that's the gross return. It's not the net return. What is the net return on your money after you apply taxes and inflation? You got to think about that. I talk to people every day, so I see what I call financial profiles. And people have many, many, many things in common. And the one thing that most people have in common is this: they do not have a financial blueprint. They do not have a financial plan. They're wandering around in the dark. You know, I drove out here today and I didn't even get a chance to get my computer set up, so I got to kind of wing it right now. But here we are, and I drove out here in the fog, and it was hard to navigate. And I couldn't help but think, this is the way a lot of people handle their money. They're driving around in the fog. You know, if I ask 1,000 people how much money they spent last year on gasoline, very few would be able to tell me. If I ask 1,000 people how much money they spent last year on groceries, very few would be able to tell me. If I ask how much they spent on vacation, very few people would be able to tell me the answer to that one. If I ask them, what is your total monthly expenditures? What does it add up to? Very few people would have the answer to that. Now, how can you manage your money if you don't have the answers? Peter Drucker once said, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So at the end of the month, or the end of the week, or when you get your paycheck, how much do you have left out of that paycheck after you pay all your bills? And you know the most important bill of all is yourself. You should pay yourself first, and then budget to pay everybody else. And gosh, I hate to use the word budget. I really hate to use that word, but very few people have a budget. Let's call it a spending plan instead of a budget. Budget has become a bad word. So very few people have a spending plan. So what is your spending plan? What is your income plan? How do you keep track of your assets and your liabilities? How do you document everything that you do? Do you try or do you make any conscious effort to mitigate your taxes? Mitigate, that's a fancy word. It means control them, reduce them, whatever, okay? But do you do that? And you know, it's a good time right now to start talking about taxes because we're into the tax season. RSP deadline, March the 1st. You have to get your income tax return filed by the end of April. You don't have a lot of time. And I just wrote a newsletter, just finished it this morning, actually, on the value of time. So what is time? You ever really think, if somebody asked you to provide a definition of time, how would you define time? You're taking a long time to answer that one, aren't you? How would you define time? Well, I define time as the space between events. It's the measurement of the space between events. So an event, there's a start point and there's a finish point to the event. Time is the space between the start and the finish. So how many events do you have going on in your life? Have you taken the time to sit down and talk to a financial advisor such as myself about your need for a financial plan? Okay? I'm looking at my producer right now, he's in the window, his name is Dwayne, and he's never come to me for a financial plan, yet he hears me talking about this all the time. I mean, there's a concept called willful blindness, or maybe willful deafness, or maybe somehow it's the word fear. Fear. Acronym, false evidence appearing real. So if you're afraid of something, and so you might be afraid of money. I don't think Donald Trump's afraid of money. He likes it, okay? And I think he's a little obsessed about it. And there's nothing wrong with being obsessed. You know, I think a lot about the term motivation, because I think motivation, or lack of thereof, I think lack of motivation is what destroys people. They don't get it done. But I think a better word for motivation is burning desire. Because you see, as soon as you use the term burning desire, everything warms up. But burning desire for what? So as soon as you say burning desire, then you've got to bring goals into the picture. So burning desire to achieve your goals. Okay? Let's think about it. What are some of the goals that you can set for yourself? And they don't have to be financial. Maybe the goals evolve or rotate around your family life. Maybe it's about your health. Maybe your blood pressure is too high. Wouldn't it be a nice goal to get your blood pressure down to 120/80? Maybe it's worry. You can't stand worry. You're worrying all the time. Dale Carnegie wrote a book one time, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Maybe you want more friends. Maybe you're not very popular. Maybe you want a better social life. Maybe you want a beautiful house on the water someplace, or a vacation home in a warm climate, or even a cold climate, maybe Whistler. Okay? Maybe you want to learn to play a musical instrument, or maybe learn a foreign language. I mean, there's a multitude of goals. And if you ask 100 people what their goals are, you get 100 different answers. But I think the reason there is so much unhappiness in the world, that there is so much malcontent, so much misery, I think the major reason is that most people don't have a burning desire to achieve any goals. They don't have any goals at all. They become a wandering generality. Zig Ziglar once said, "Are you a meaningful specific or a wandering generality?" So I ask my audience that question right now. Are you a meaningful specific or a wandering generality? Maybe it's time to pull your socks up. Maybe your best New Year's resolution of all, I'm going to get that financial plan. I'm going to start learning more about my money. I'm going to get more involved in my favorite topic, my money. I call it your money, but you call it my money. Okay? Remember that TV program, Ben Stein's Money? I like that. That was a good program. Very educational. So how can you get more knowledge? The last two shows that we did, we talked about the steps in the financial planning process. And what was step one? Do you remember? Did you write it down? Because if you can't even remember step one, you're not even getting to first base. So step one is to get some financial knowledge. Step one is what this radio show is all about. I'm here to teach you what you need to know to make better financial decisions. That's my mission. So there's a lot of repetition. Some people say, well, you don't listen to him. He just keeps repeating stuff over and over and over again. That's how you teach. Okay? The teaching process. You tell them. You show them. You get them to show you. And step 4 is you drill for skill. That's repetition. Repetition, over and over and over again. How did you memorize stuff when you went to school? The rote method, repetition. Just kept repeating it and repeating it till you got it. Okay? I had a heck of a time remembering my social insurance number. But one day I developed a burning desire to remember it, and I repeated it so many times I can't get it out of my head now. It's like it's burned into my brain. So you're out there right now, you're listening to the show, and I'm going to ask this question. And I urge you to participate in the show by calling in. But I'm going to ask this question. What is the most important thing? What is the single most important thing that you could do this year to do better financially? And what are you going to do about it? Did you write that down? What is the thing I can do, the most important thing that I can do right now to do better financially in 2016? Forget all those other resolutions that you never do anyway. I'm going to get what? I'm going to get myself a financial plan. And guess what? You make a phone call right now, it's free. It doesn't cost 5 cents. Shouldn't say it's not free. It doesn't cost money. It costs time, it costs effort, it costs all that. But it doesn't cost you any money. And I'm willing to gamble my time that you'll find that a very favorable experience. And you can come into my office and sit down with me, and within about a half an hour, I can generate a financial plan with you sitting right in front of me. So you'll be part of the process. It will be an interactive process. I will ask you questions like, how much do you spend on groceries? Your response will probably be, don't know. Well, let me help you. How many people are there in your family? 4. Do they all eat? Are they all adults? Okay. According to Statistics Canada, $350 a month per adult. So multiply that by 4, that's how much you spend on groceries on average. Might be more, might be less. You might have a garden in the backyard so you don't buy vegetables and stuff. How much does it cost to drive a car? I spent 3 hours the other day researching that question. And it boils down as a modest car, $10,000 a year. That's $800 and some a month. That's not a car like I drive, because my car's not modest. But the bottom line is that just an ordinary car. But you say, well, gee, I don't spend that much. Let's talk about that. How much do you spend on gasoline? You know, you can Google the question, how much does it cost to drive a medium-sized car per kilometer? Google will give you the answer. Now, all you got to do is look at your odometer, and you know how many miles you drove last year, or kilometers. Do the math. Now, when you look at the cost of your car, what about the insurance? What about tires and repairs? Think about it. Now, is some of your car tax deductible? Because if you use it for business and you keep a proper log, keep track of your mileage, you can write some of that expense off. So from a tax point of view, maybe the net or the before tax cost is $800 a month, but the after tax cost might be $500 a month or something like that. So you have to be able to sit down and you have to categorize your expenses. How much do I spend on my vacation? I'm not sure. How many vacations do you take a year, sir or ma'am? 1. Okay. Your last vacation, where'd you go? Spain. How long were you there? A month. So how much does it cost to travel to Spain and stay there for a month? And maybe from that you should deduct what you'd spend if you stayed at home, because the difference is the real cost. But I say, or lots of people say to me, well, I take a cruise. Well, a cruise for 2 is about $5,000. So you got to kind of negotiate these numbers. And you don't have to be deadly accurate. because we're just planning. Close is good enough. And I will tell you right now from experience and talking to thousands of people that the average person in Vancouver spends about $40,000 a year. But remember, not everybody's average. That's just the average. Some people spend 60 and 70, and some people spend a lot less. So it depends. So if I said to you, what age you want to, okay, so you're 40 years of age. What age you want to retire? Well, I don't know. Let's say I want to retire at 60. That's 20 years from now. So I'm going into the future for 20 years. If you retired today, how much would you need to live? 40,000. Okay, well, what will that 40,000 be 20 years from now if you adjust it for inflation? So you do the math and you assume 3% for inflation. 3% for inflation, I'm not really great at math in my head. That's a complicated calculation. But you take that 40,000 and you raise it to the power of 3 times 20, like for 20 years, and you'll get a number. Now, if you divide the rate of return into 72, that's how long it takes to double. So if inflation is 3%, it takes 3 goes into 72 how many times? 18? 18 years to double your money, or to double the price. That's almost 20 years. That would be close. So if it's 40,000 today, 20 years from now, it'll be around 80. But people don't think that way. They say, well, I need 40, so in 20 years I need 40. 40 won't buy nearly as much then as it would today if the inflation rate is 3%. So how much money have I already accumulated? How do you figure that out? And some people say, well, let's see, my house, I got $1 million equity in my house. No, you don't count your house. You have to calculate what's known as your net working assets. That's everything but your house. So your net working assets are the investments that you own. Now, maybe you have a piece of rental property. That's okay to count that. Maybe you have a portfolio of mutual funds worth $100,000 or a portfolio of stocks worth $100,000. Maybe all that. So what is your net working assets? And let's say you do the calculations, and my software will do that. You do the calculations and you end up, we'll say you got $500,000. So if today you got $500,000, you want to retire in 20 years when you're 60. You want an income of $40,000, inflation adjusted at 3%. What will the $500,000 that you have today be worth in 20 years? I don't know. Depends on the rate of return. So what rate of return are you going to assume? Because it's got to be conservative. So I did a lot of research on that question. And generally speaking, the number they use today is 6%. On a long-term basis, you ought to be able to average out at least 6%. Okay, so what will the $40,000 be worth in 20 years if you get a return on it of 6%? I'm not going to bother to do the mathematical calculations on that one, but let's say that $500,000 in 20 years is worth $1 million. Be a little more than that, but let's say it grows to $1 million. Well, will that $1 million generate an inflation-adjusted income of $40,000 a year for the rest of your life? Now we have to make another assumption. How long are you going to live? Now, what happens if you say, well, I think I'm going to live to be 120. And you do the calculations and your money runs out when you're 80 or 85. You got a problem. Okay? So you got to balance all these parameters into a plan. And you got to crunch the numbers. So these numbers, this scenario that I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen, listeners, this is what a financial plan does. So what a financial plan does, it says, this is a list of my goals. So my only goal is I want to retire at 60 in comfort. You might have a whole litany of long list of goals, but let's just say it's just comfortable retirement. Okay, so that's your goal. That's the first part of the plan. The second part of the plan is, what do the numbers look like? And that's what I've just been talking about. That will be posted inside the plan. And then there'll be a section of the plan that deals with the issue of risk. What happens if I become disabled before I reach retirement age? What happens if I die? What happens if I develop a critical illness? What happens if I get sued? Develop Alzheimer's? End up in a long-term care facility? How do I deal with the education of my children, which was an important goal? And I should have listed that one as well as retirement, because a 40-year-old probably has some children that's going to be going to college pretty soon, if you're that age. And you don't want your retirement plan competing with your educational plan for your children. They have to work together. So if you do all the things that we're talking about inside a financial plan and you accumulate a fortune while you're still young enough to enjoy it, you have another problem. What is your succession plan? How do you make sure that these assets are passed on to your beneficiaries, your children, your grandchildren? What is your legacy? How do you deal with that particular issue? And maybe you need to develop a very complex plan. Maybe you have a business. You have 50, 60, 100 employees. You want this passed on to your children. What is the succession plan involving your business? And sometimes a financial planner like myself doesn't have the knowledge to be able to deal with complex issues like that. So what do? We bring in specialists. I have a mastermind group that I consult with. Yeah. We had Blair Manton, who deals with debt, on this show a couple weeks ago, where we talked about what happens if you find yourself in debt over your head. Should you declare bankruptcy? Should you try to make a settlement? That's what he specializes in. Vern Northcott, that's on this show, she specializes in real estate. Okay. We have Timothy Lack, who's a lawyer. He deals with estate planning. Susan Lee Halliburta, who works with me at Scotia McLeod, she's an insurance expert. So I turn to the experts. Jamie Newen with Davidson and Company. Okay. These people are experts in their various fields. And I will be building that mastermind group so that it gets larger and larger and larger. I tell the story quite often about Henry Ford. People think that education is synonymous with knowledge. Isn't necessarily. Henry Ford only had 6 years elementary school. Became one of the most successful businessmen in the United States. The Chicago Tribune criticized him publicly for being uneducated. So he sued them. And in court, when he was on the stand, they asked him all kinds of crazy historical questions about who discovered America and yada, yada, yada. And he just listened. He didn't answer. Finally, after about a dozen questions, he stood up and he said, "Look, you fools." He said, "If you think that I'm going to clutter my brain up with all kinds of useless knowledge like that, you got another thing coming, because I don't need to. Because on my desk, I have 15 buttons. One button says accountant. I have an accounting question. I push the button. My accountant comes in. I ask him the questions. I get the answers. Another says lawyer. Same thing. Engineering department. Same thing. Today, I'm reading this, and I find it very interesting. I think this is unbelievable. Then I get thinking, hey, today, it's even better than that. I have a computer in front of me right now. I just hit Google, and I got zillions of sources of information. Find out almost anything that you want to know. And I mean that. Anything that you want to know. Remember one time I'm at home and a bumblebee starts buzzing around me. We're on the porch. I'm sitting there with my wife. And I said, it strikes me. I don't think, I've been in BC for 20-something, I don't think I've ever seen a bumblebee. And she said, well, that's not a bumblebee, it's a honeybee. I said, oh no, that's a bumblebee. Where I come from, that's a bumblebee. We got in an argument over it. I pulled my computer out, looked up bumblebee. I said, there you go. There's a bumblebee. Click, there's a honeybee. That was a bumblebee. Okay? It doesn't matter what it is. She does this to me all the time now. we get into a debate. Like, I think one time she told me that Ronald Reagan's IQ was 105. I said, go away. No way. Looked it up. Apparently it was. That means he wasn't a brilliant man, but he was still a smart man. One of the best presidents the United States ever had. So the list is endless. And this show here is all about your money and how to keep it. And it's all about the fact that it's not about how much you make that counts. It's about how much you keep. And you won't keep much of it if you don't get yourself a proper financial plan. And I can't say that too many times. Get yourself a financial plan. That should be your New Year's resolution. Okay? Now, I have sometimes people come in to see me for a second opinion on their financial plan, and they bring their financial plan in. And I have this happen frequently. And the plan is about 50 or 60 pages. I look at it, and I put it back in front of the client, and I say, do you understand it? I can guarantee you the answer is always no, I don't. So you need to get yourself a financial plan that you can understand. It's got to be fundamental, and it's got to be simple, and it's got to be easy to understand. And you got to be motivated to understand it. You got to have a burning desire to understand it. And you got to have a burning desire to do better financially, and you got to have a burning desire to get yourself a financial plan. Now, I know that I'm talking to a lot of people right now. At least I think I am. I don't think I'm talking just to myself. But bottom line is, lots of people listening to this show right now, the vast majority of these people do not have a financial plan. Some of you have a financial plan, and some of you have a substantial net worth. And some of you may be happy with your plan, and some of you may be questioning your plan. But I say this, that even if you have a plan, and even if you're fairly satisfied with it and think you understand it, you should get yourself a second opinion on a regular basis. So maybe a phone call to myself, maybe an appointment for a second opinion on your financial plan, on your investment plan, would be a really good idea. So we use software. And if I have your portfolio in front of me, I can put your stocks into the computer. I can put your mutual funds into the computer. I can put all your financial statistics in, push a button, and it will give me an analysis of everything. It will say the expected rate of return on your portfolio based on past performance is 11.75% compounded annually. That's a figure I just picked out of the air. It's hypothetical, because it won't say that all the time. It might say it's 3% based on past performance. It might say it's 20% based on past performance. But you will know what the expected rate of return is based on past performance. And if the expected rate of return is high, the risk will also be high. It measures risk. Risk is measured by what is called standard deviation. You can get a number, 0 risk is a GIC or a T-bill. Moderate risk is about 10 on standard deviation scale. That can go as high as 40. So you need to know, how much risk are you taking? Now, I get this often. People come in, they sit in front of me, and I say, Mr. Jones, what is your tolerance for risk? Is it low, moderate, or high? To a T, I always say low. Almost all the time, 99% of the time they say low. Occasionally moderate, never high. I say, well, I'm looking at your portfolio right now, and in my opinion, this portfolio has it's risky. So what are you, with a low tolerance for risk, doing with your life savings in risky investments? That doesn't make an ounce of sense. So you need to take a second look at your tolerance for risk. You have to look at your portfolio and say, is this really what I want to do? Do I want to gamble with my money? Am I the kind of person that spends all my money on lottery tickets and goes to Las Vegas and all that kind of stuff all the time? You don't bet the farm on anything. Shouldn't do that. Have to go to the break. When we come back, we'll continue to talk about your New Year's resolution. Don't go away.
Fred Snyder.
Statistically, if you take 100 people who start out equal today at the age of 25, by the time they end up at 65, 1 is wealthy, 4 are well-to-do, 5 are still working, 36 are dead, and the rest are dead broke, dependent on family and state. That's over half the people who start out equal at age 25 by the time they end up at 65 are dependent on family and state. And that's a sad state of statistics.
Fred Snyder.
You need a blueprint that says, this is where you're at right now, and this is where you want to go, and this is the way to get there.
Fred Snyder.
So isn't it time to get that good, warm, fuzzy feeling because you know exactly where you're at? You know that your investments are going to work for you. You know that you have the right investments inside your financial plan. You're confident about the future because you've covered all the bases. You know exactly how much life insurance you need, and you have the right amount of insurance. You have a financial advisor, such as myself, or somebody that's equally competent that you can check with to determine whether you're on track or not. And whether you're on track or not, you know, I'd like to use the analogy, do you have a GPS?
Fred's got your GPS. Talk to Fred. Listen to Fred. Fred Snyder. Sunday mornings 9 to 11 on CIL 650. This is CISL Vancouver. Smooth and easy. CIL 650. This is It's Your Money on CIL 650. Here once again is Fred Snyder.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're interactive. We're talking about your financial plan and your New Year's resolution to get one. So if you have any questions, you should phone in right now. The number to call is area code 604-280-0650. Long distance is 1-877-280-0650. Log on, www.cil650.com. And for those who are shy or reluctant to talk on the air for any reason whatsoever, Frida is down at the office right now. You can reach her at 604-737-3512. Long distance, 1-800-661-1495. Remember, once again, we're talking about your money, more importantly, about your money and how to keep it. So I hope all this makes sense. If it doesn't, make a phone call. There we go again with that phone call thing. Okay, make a phone call. Let's have a discussion about it. Do you believe that you need a financial plan? If you do, how come you don't have one? What is getting between you and acquiring a written financial plan? Or any kind of a financial plan for that matter. What is the roadblock? And what will it take to get rid of that roadblock? Blair Manton gave away a bunch of books. He dropped them off last week at the office, so they're down at the office. If you want to get one of those books, come on in and get one. That's on managing your debt. I think debt management is one of the major reasons why people fail financially. I think it's a very important one. Because what happens? Well, you finish school. Maybe you're 18, maybe you go to college and you're 25 or so. You finish school, what's the first thing you do? Back in those days, you buy a car. Today, maybe mom or dad buys it for you, even when you're still in school. Okay? Times have changed. But I remember my first car was a 48 Chev. That was in 1954. I had just finished school. I had a job at DuPont of Canada, Maitland, Ontario. Stationary engineer. So I said to my father, I said, Dad, I need a car. Gotta have a car. So we went to the bank, we borrowed $600 from the Bank of Montreal. And we bought a 48 Chev. Now remember, that car wasn't old then. Maybe 5, 6 years old. That was my first car. I drove that car for 6 months. I could have driven it for 3, 4 years, I suppose. But I drove it for 6 months. I had to have a brand new car. So I traded the 48 Chev on a 55 Plymouth. It cost me $2,700 extra, which I financed through IAC, Industrial Acceptance Corporation. My car payment was $87 a month for 30 months. I didn't know about time. I didn't know about mutual funds. I didn't know about compound interest. Nobody ever taught me any of that stuff in those days. I think my parents should have, but they didn't, because they probably didn't know it either. So I'm trying to spread the word here right now to you, your kids, your grandchildren, everybody else. You got to understand the time value of money. And when I finish the story, you will. Because I calculated, I said, you know, let's suppose I had postponed buying that 55 Plymouth. And I kept the 48 Chev instead. And after that, I bought every other car just the way I have for the rest of my life. I just skipped one car. And if I'd invested that money in Templeton Growth Fund, that $2,700, how much would I have today? The figure was $3.5 million. Skipped one car. Now I know hardly anybody knew about Templeton Growth Fund back then, or even mutual funds and all that. And so the story is kind of hypothetical, but it makes a good point. It's not about how much you invest. It's not about rate of return necessarily. It's about time. The value of time, the time value of money. So what do? We procrastinate. We say we'll do it when we get a new job. We say, well, we'll do it after the baby's born. We'll do it when I get the car paid for. The list is endless. These are just excuses. There's only one thing to do, and that is do it now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, now. So what do you say? I mean, I had a 21-year-old guy in my office last week. I said, you should be putting some money away. He said, I know, but I'm young. I want to have some fun. I need to buy a new car. See me later. Okay. So later, he's 25. Can't do it now, I'm married. Got a child on the way. My expenses are going up. See me later. 30. Can't do it now, growing family. It's all I can do to pay my expenses. See me later. And this goes on and on and on. And all of a sudden, one day you wake up and you're 50 or 55. It's not too late, but it's almost too late. And the cost of financial success becomes excruciating. And you're not going to get there. There's a story, there's a message here. And if you're listening to this show right now, I suggest, if you're not, if you haven't done it, that you become computer literate. My wife has an aunt who's 95. And we have a grandson that we're very proud of. His name is Cody. And Cody went over and taught her how to use the internet at 95. She sends out a zillion emails every day right now. She's so addicted to the computer, it's unbelievable. And it's wonderful. Yeah. So two things, highly valuable. Email, Google. I'm almost tempted. I tried this one time before, and I think I'd like to do it again. I think I'd like to put together a workshop on how to use the internet. Mostly for financial stuff, but almost anything. You want to do a research project? Easy to do. So, number to call, 604-280-0650. Long distance, 1-877-280-0650. Log on, www.CIL650.com. And for the shy people, those who are afraid to talk on the air, read us down at the office, area code 604-737-3512. Long distance, 1-800-661-1495. So, how are you going to get your life in action? You know, I want you to think about one phrase. The future starts now. The future starts now. The best way to predict the future is to create it. And it starts now. It starts now with a financial plan. And you can't tell me that you don't, you certainly won't convince me that you don't want to do better financially. It's impossible. I often say I've been rich and I've been poor, and I'd rather be rich. Would you rather be a real poor individual sleeping on the street or be Donald Trump? And don't say you don't want to be Donald Trump. This man doesn't care. And you know something? He doesn't have to. It's incredible when you think about the fact that he may be the next president of the United States. A lot of people say not a chance. They've been saying that for a long time. But he's still right up there in the polls. So when we talk about financial planning, I want you to visualize a binder, 3-ring binder. And it's got 10 dividers in it. Can you see that? It's got a great big gold $sign on the front cover. And underneath that it says, My Plan. That is the hub of your financial future. The hub. Every wheel has a hub. So that's the hub. Now the first tab on that, in that binder, says what? It says financial education. And inside that tab you have all the different ways that you can educate yourself financially. So what is the most important of all these ways? What is the best and easiest way to educate yourself financially? What is it? Why don't you give us a call? How do you educate yourself financially? Give us a call and let us know. Okay? I say the easiest way is called Google. Okay? It's called the internet. It's called the iPad. It's called the Dell computer. It's called the iPhone. I'm watching a CNN documentary on jobs. Unbelievable. I remember, I bought my first Apple computer in 1981. 48K. Floppy disks, 48K. remember when I used the word processor, the memory was so stingy I didn't use periods or commas. We've come so far. So inside that first tab is a list of all the sources of education that you can get. You can take the Canadian Securities course. You don't have to be in the business. You can take the IFIC course for mutual funds. You can go to night school, BCIT, Cap College. There's all kinds of sources of information out there, but you got to be motivated to learn. So how are you going to create a burning desire? There we are with that one again. Burning desire for more education, financially speaking. How are you going to do that? Maybe you need to find a way to be able to memorize stuff better. There's memory systems out there. You can buy books that will teach you how to memorize almost anything using pictures. Okay. But that first tab is all about your continuing education and not necessarily about money. Continuing education about anything. And the best source of all that, the best source of the knowledge, is called the internet and Google. So if you don't know how to use the internet and Google, you're challenged. You won't be able to keep up. If a 95-year-old lady can get excited about all this kind of stuff at 95, actually started at 92, but think about it. Because it keeps you connected. You know, I'm walking down the street, I'm looking around me, and there's all kinds of people. And about a third of the people walking down the street, they're messing with their phone. I go in a restaurant, 3/4 of the people in the restaurant are messing with their phones. Why? Because they're connected. And they want to be connected. So wouldn't it be nice to be connected to a vast source of knowledge? You push a button like Henry Ford, and you can find out anything that you want to know. Not only that, you can print it out, create documents, do almost anything. So that first tab is knowledge. I want you to think about that. And I want you to talk to me about it. 604-280-0650. Long distance 1-877-280-0650. Log on www.CIL650.com. Free to down at the office, area code 604-737-3512. Long distance 1-800-661-1495. Remember, once again, I remind you, we're talking about your money and how to keep it on CIL650.com. So if you've just tuned in, I'm certified financial planner Fred Snyder, also registered financial planner representing Scotia Wealth Management. And I wish you all a very happy New Year. But I want you to get it off on the right foot. Your single sole resolution, at least the one you're going to keep, is I'm going to get myself a written financial plan. The future starts now, and I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to start that process by making a phone call. Once again, 604-280-0650. Long distance, 1-877-280-0650. Log on, www.CIL650.com. Free to down at the office, 604-737-3512. Long distance, 1-800-661-1495. Talking about your money, more importantly about your money and how to keep it. Now, tab 1. What did we just talk about? Repetition again, eh? Repetition. Tab 1, education. So when I use the word education, you visualize all the things I just talked about. Okay, second tab. Second tab is about goals. Now, if you never get even beyond tab 1 and tab 2, you've taken 2 steps in the right direction. But tab 2 is about goals. Now, I've said this many times on this show, but I'm going to repeat it again and again and again and again. 5 steps to achieving any goal. So maybe on the tab page for section 2, this is what you write down. You have crystallize your thinking. Crystallize your thinking. In other words, your goals that you set for yourself have to be crystal clear so that you can visualize them. So you crystallize your thinking. So step 1 is crystallize your thinking. Step 2 is to develop written plans and deadlines. So if one of your goals that you can visualize is wealth, picture a great big bag of money. You can visualize that. Develop written plans and deadlines. That's your financial plan. That's part of it. So any goal that you set for yourself needs a written plan with deadlines. It has to be time bonded. Develop written plans and deadlines. And that's good. Step 3 is kindle desire. And the word kindle connotes fire. So that's your burning desire. So maybe step 3 would be better phrased if we said develop a burning desire. However you want to phrase it, it doesn't matter. But you have to have a burning desire to achieve the goals that you established in step 2. Step 3, or step 4 I should say, is to develop confidence. You have to believe that you can achieve these goals. If you set a goal for yourself and you have no hope of ever achieving it, it won't motivate you for a second. So you have to be able to believe you can, and that's confidence. So how do you develop confidence? Well, let's say that you say, well, I'm going to save $30 a month. Okay, not bad. But $1 a day sounds better. It's easier to save $1 a day than it is to save $30 a month, even though they're both the same thing. So you take these larger goals and you break them down into smaller goals. And you develop the habit of always achieving that smaller, achievable goal. So confidence becomes a habit. Would anybody doubt that Donald Trump is not a very confident person? Extremely confident, brutally confident. You have to believe you can, or you won't get there. So what have we said so far? Crystallize your thinking, develop written plans and deadlines, have a burning desire, and believe you can. The next step is probably the most important one of all of them, and that's to have the iron-willed determination to achieve the goals that you set for yourself, regardless of circumstances, criticism, or what other people say, think, or do. 5 steps. And those are so important. And they tie in to the goals issue. So right now, you have an educational plan. You have your goals well established, and you've got this binder to put all this information in. So what do you think step 3 is? So step 3 is to have a cash flow. You might even label it cash flow. It's about your income and expenses. It's your budget. And inside that is taxes as well. So in other words, where does the money come from? What's the source of the money? That's section 3. Where will I get the money to feed my plan? How will I feed my piggy bank? One of the things that I'm going to do is pay myself first. Instead of paying everybody, the landlord, the grocer, the doctor, the dentist, the tax collector, everybody that comes along, instead of paying them, I'm going to pay myself first. From now on, every time I earn $1, I'm going to put 10 cents away for myself. 10 cents, that's it. Then I'm going to take the other 90 cents and I'm going to budget to pay everybody else. That will be my spending plan. Within that part of the plan, I'll mitigate my taxes. I'll do everything that I can to increase my income and everything that I can to decrease my expenses. That's a plan within a plan. It's called cash flow. And there's a board game you can get. It's called Cash Flow Management. I'd suggest that might not be a bad idea for most of us to get one of those board games and practice it. Would be not a bad idea at all. So cash flow. So we deal with cash. Then we have retirement planning. So retirement planning is about what will my expenses look like the day that I retire? How much will I need to live 15 or 20 years from now, or even today if I'm retired right now? How much do I need to live? And where will I get the money? Well, we got old age pension, Canada pension plan, guaranteed income supplement. You have a group pension at work or a government pension plan. You may have some kind of a retirement scheme that's set up by your company, a deferred profit sharing plan, maybe RRSPs. Where will my income in retirement come from? Maybe I need to set up a GLWB, a Guaranteed Lifetime Withdrawal Benefit program offered by the insurance companies. You have to take the time. You've planned your expenses. Now you have to take the time to plan your income. It's just as important. So now you know the day I retire, I'm going to need $40,000 a year in future dollars, and this is where the money's going to come from. I've looked after that step. It's well defined. It's well spelled out. How will I invest my investments inside that plan? What percentage of my assets inside the retirement part of the plan is going to be invested in fixed income or guaranteed securities, guaranteed income type securities? What percentage? 40%, 50%, or more, or less? How much in equities, investments that grow, that will deal with inflation? What do we do there? So you got a balance that's well established inside your retirement plan. So once you're satisfied that everything in there is well defined, well put together, can be measured and tracked, once that's established, what do you think comes next? Does that mean you stop investing? Maybe you only have to feed the retirement plan X amount of dollars per month, but you still got some money left over. What do you do with it? Well, you can spend it, but maybe you still want to save and invest it. So I call that your capital plan. In the investment industry that I'm in, they call it your cash account. You might want to call it your unregistered retirement savings plan. You got your retirement savings plan, now you got your unregistered retirement savings plan. So how should that be structured? I think that if you look at fixed income, you want some fixed income, and you want some equities, and you want to establish a balance in there, there'd be less emphasis on fixed income because that's all taxable, and more emphasis on equities where you get tax-preferred income. For example, if you're in the highest tax bracket and you're investing outside of RRSPs, the tax that you would pay on income on capital gains is about 20%. The tax that you would pay on dividends would be about 20%. If you're in the top tax bracket on anything else, it'd be 50%. So it's much better to pay 20 than 50. So maybe the focus inside that part of your particular plan should be on tax-preferred income, like dividends and capital gains. Okay, so if you have any questions, get on the line and give us a call. We got to go to the break. So we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about your money and how to keep it. Don't go away. So you got to start thinking about how you're spending your money.
Fred Snyder.
If you can reduce the amount of tax you pay, that means that you get a tax refund. So you get a tax refund means you've really overpaid your taxes. And if you overpay your taxes, what you've really done is loan money to the government. So rule number 1 of my 46 ways to ease the tax bite is don't lend your money to the government.
Fred Snyder.
So pay your taxes. We're not talking about not paying your taxes. We're talking about legal ways to reduce the taxes you pay, not avoid them, to reduce the taxes you pay so that you can have more money to save and invest so that you can achieve your financial goals sooner. And if you're already there, stay there longer, because once you get there, it's your obligation to stay there.
Fred Snyder.
If you have a financial plan and you're somewhere in the middle and you're wondering what tweaks that you should make in that plan to make it what you really want it to be, time to make a phone call. Or if maybe you're just getting started out and you want to get a starter plan, maybe it's time to talk to somebody like myself and get yourself on the right track.
Fred Snyder.
I think that everybody needs to go and make an appointment to see Fred.
Talk to Fred. Listen to Fred. Fred Snyder. Sunday mornings 9 to 11 on CIL 650. Welcome back to It's Your Money on CIL 650. If you have a question for Fred, call 604-280-0650. Now, back to Fred.
Okay, we're back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're talking, once again, I can't repeat myself too many times, about your money and how to keep it. And if you just tuned in, I'm certified financial planner, Fred Snyder, also registered financial planner representing Scotia Wealth Management. That's a new name. It used to be Scotia McLeod. We've changed the name. And again, we're reaching out. We're reaching out to people who want to do better financially, and we're talking about what does a financial plan look like? Well, to me, I have an icon that I visualize every time I think of a financial plan. I see a 3-ring binder, big dollar sign on the front of it in gold, 10 tabs in it, and each tab is labeled. So the first tab is really about acquiring knowledge. And the second tab is about your goals, and then cash management, then debt management, debt reduction is another one. So what's your plan to get out of debt? Like, do you have good debt or bad debt? What is bad debt? Well, if you're paying 18% on credit cards because you're carrying balances, and that interest isn't tax deductible, that's a problem. It's a huge problem. Think about it. Let's just suppose that you're paying 18% interest on a credit card and it's not deductible, and you're in the top tax bracket. If you're in the top tax bracket, it's unlikely that you would be carrying balances like that on your credit cards, but if you were, if you're in the top tax bracket in BC, it's 50%. So here you are, you pay 18 in after-tax dollars, and before-tax dollars, that's 36%. If you convert that to dollars, let's say that's $5,000 in after-tax dollars, and before-tax dollars is $10,000. If your salary is $90,000 a year, that's $10,000 out of the 90. So you're paying just an interest on a past-due balance on a credit card. It makes absolutely no sense to carry balances like that on credit cards. So if that's you, what you ought to be doing is getting a home equity line of credit, or certainly a line of credit where the interest rate is a lot lower than 18%, and pay those credit cards off and cut them up. If you're addicted to them, cut them up. Get rid of them, okay? They're a problem. So cash management is a very important part of your financial plan, as well as debt management. They kind of go hand in hand, like love and marriage. Let's talk to Leon from Langley. Leon, welcome to the program. Thanks for calling.
Hi.
Hi, Leon.
I've listened to you in the cars and at home, and I thought now it's about time I phone you, because whatever you say, it makes so sense, 110%. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment.
Well, it's true, you know. I call it always, honesty is the best policy. If you're honest, hard-working man, you cannot screw up. I don't care where you live. In Timbuktu, which it doesn't even exist. You know?
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's correct. So to me.
So what's your question?
Well, my question was, I was listening to you too. I'm computer illiterate, and like you say, you should learn. You should need it even if you're older. I'm almost 70. In 4 months, I'll be 70. So.
You're still a young man.
No, I'm not young man. I'm almost 70. So, and I have
You're younger than me.
I have a tough talk with my old lady. We never see eye to eye. If you don't see with your woman eye to eye, you can't get ahead. Simple as that. You're going backwards. And that's what happened in my life. Even though I got 6 grandchildren with 2 boys, I would have 3. She killed the 3rd one.
Mm. Do you have a financial plan?
No, I do not. I do not have.
Do you have a financial advisor?
No.
Do you have investments?
No, none.
You don't, eh? Okay, well, call
I
Frida.
live on a 5-acre hobby farm, so that's my investment.
Give Frida a call, and maybe we can look after you.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe you can get me to somebody to teach me, because I know I used to go on ships. I was a ship chandler. You know what that means. Going to ports all throughout Lower Mainland here and serve the sailors, from captain to chief to cook to you name it. The crew of 27, whatever. But anyway, they told me, oh, no, Leon, you can learn a computer. But you know what? I don't have no patience. I don't know if I can do it. I'm sure I can. If I can ride a motorcycle and all those things, I can do that, you know.
You know, I'm pretty computer literate. And you want to know something? I've never taken a computer course in my life.
No?
The first
How do you know
computer
about
I bought an Apple computer, 48K, in 1981. I took it home, I turned it on, and looked at it for about 3 hours and said, what do I do now?
Uh-oh.
And I'll tell you what I learned.
No,
I turned it on and
no, like teach me, like you're a kid, you want to learn how to drive a car. Teach me basics, you know, this is your plug-in, this is what you, but you know what I'm scared, I always hear these viruses and all these kind of people that attack you, and, you know, you have a problem with computer. Not only that, they get outdated. You buy it today, 6 months later, there's new technology, yours is nearly obsolete.
well, that's somewhat true. That's quite true.
You know what? Like I said, I'm a biker, and I went 2 years ago. I come back from Europe. I went to Salem, Oregon, to a BMW rally. I want to go to 38 BMW rally. I was in heaven, man. I blew in there over $2,000 buying stuff for the bike and whatever. There I met a woman that she has more nuts than any man in the world. And she's from where? Slovenia. She went on 2 wheels around the world.
Wow.
On her own, solo. No, that's what I'm saying. Oh, that's right. Where does it come from? You know what I always say? Good things come from small packages. And that's a fact.
Well, you have to sit down, Leon. You have to sit
I have
down,
to sit
and
through
you
it.
have to sit down, and you have to make a menu. You have to make a list
Yes,
of all the
yes,
things that
you
you
know,
want
I
to
got
achieve,
that.
your hopes, your plans, your dreams, and your ambitions.
Oh, no,
That's what you
I'm
need to
doing-
do.
Actually, I'm playing really good, actually. I cut up my one MasterCard that I have. I cut it up so I can't use it no more. I figure in 2 months I'll pay it off, and then I'm debt free. Then I can save something like, not you say save $1. No, I can save, as of March, about $1,500 a month. I mean, that's how much I could save.
Well, maybe it's time to start doing that.
Yeah. We'll get together. So
Help
you got
us
my-
help
you
us
got my
create a
boat
plan
number,
for you.
My house number, you got my cell number. So we'll get together and we'll figure this out.
Okay, Leon, appreciate your call.
Okay.
And once again, Happy New Year. All the best.
Bless you. And you know what? Everybody says Happy New Year. You know what? I got a better one for you. Healthy, 3 times. And prosperous, then you can say thank you. Because you're healthy, and you're prosperous. You got all those, then you're done. You're happier than shit.
Healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Okay, thank you.
I think
very
I'm
much.
going to change the name of my show to that. That's the name I'm looking for. Healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. You take care, Leon. All the best.
All the best to you.
Can't tell you how much I appreciate your call.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so that was Leon. And ladies and gentlemen and listeners, that line is now available. So you're out there, you're listening to the show. You have a question, you have a comment, you want some clarification, you want to get yourself a book. I didn't talk about my giveaway today, but everybody who calls the show gets a seat at our next workshop. We're going to talk about the time value of money as an example. We've been talking about that. Again, there's a couple of newsletters that's up on my screen that I just completed. One of them is a PowerPoint presentation, 46 ways to ease the tax bite. And the second one is the time value of money. And that's one of the things we've been talking about. So you got to understand that 2% extra rate of return, 2% extra makes a big difference. And if you're going to make any money today, you can't make money by buying GICs, term deposits, and Canada savings bonds. They can't possibly make you any money. In fact, they're guaranteed to lose you money. Because if the rate of return is 3%, and that's taxed, it would be generous to say that you keep 2. If inflation is 3, your real return is -1. So you have to understand that. You have to understand that principle. And really, when we talk about risk, we're not talking about the risk of losing all your money. We're talking about the risk of volatility. One day your account is up, and the next day your account is down. It fluctuates. It fluctuates like a yo-yo in the hands of a person climbing stairs. So what you want to do is try to find a way to get the string shorter. So you want the downs to be not so much and the ups not to be so much. So a yo-yo with a shorter string is better than a yo-yo with a longer string. And it's like a yo-yo in the hands of a person climbing stairs. That's what when we refer to volatility. And that is measurable. Okay? So I suppose I'm talking to maybe 4,000 people, 5,000 people right now, and I'll guarantee you that most of our listeners right now listening to this show don't have any idea what the standard deviation of their portfolio is. And that's how you measure risk. Is your standard deviation 10, 20, 1, 2, 3? What is it? You don't know. Doesn't surprise me. Okay? If I ask you the question, what's your tolerance for risk? Is it low, moderate, or high? You're going to tell me low. So then I say, well, what is the standard deviation of your portfolio? You say, I don't know. That doesn't make an ounce of sense. If your tolerance for risk is low, then you would think you'd be highly motivated to know what the standard deviation of your portfolio is. Instead, you leave it up to chance. Let's talk to Tracy from Vancouver. Tracy, welcome to the program. Happy New Year.
Good morning, Fred, and Happy New Year.
Mm-hmm.
I just woke up. So I wanted to say that you started to emphasize it about the amount of money people get for Canada savings bonds, GICs, and all that, and realizing that they're making probably less than 1%. Maybe a GIC you might get 2 or 3. I don't know. But
that's one I could find yesterday was 2.5.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is you compare your and I know many people that I used to work with, and myself included, that bought Canada savings bonds through work. And I started to attend your class and realized that, hey, those Canada savings bonds aren't doing anything for me. And the only way I'm going to make that money work for me was to pay off the debt on my credit cards, whatever I had, any debt that I had, and then go out and take out a loan, and then put the loan back into investments, and now I can claim the interest on the loan on income tax. So I think it's really important for people, like you have said many times, to sit down with somebody and go through and plan their the way they spend their money, or the way they save their money. And I found that by knowing that I was going to be able to pay, that I was going to be able to save on the interest by taking out an investment loan, and I would also be paying back the loan, but it wasn't. I was going to be able to save money more so by doing it that way than by doing it the other way. Are you understanding what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
That's called leverage.
Yeah. And I've tried to include that in talking with friends. It's get the credit cards paid off with your savings account. Then go to your local friendly bank, credit union, whatever, and take out an investment loan. And then you start declaring then you can deduct the interest on your taxes the next year.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So that was all I wanted to say as a way to get things going.
Well, you've been a follower of mine for a long time, Tracy, and I have you on the line, and I really appreciate your call. Let's let me ask you one simple question. You have attended probably more of my workshops than anybody I know.
Oh, thanks.
And you're quite knowledgeable when it comes to investing.
Except that I can't even remember what the standard deviation is on my account when you were mentioning that, and I'm going, it's probably 5. But Well,
I can tell you this. I can tell you it's probably closer to 4.
Okay, 4 then. Okay. Yeah.
Which means if 1 is really low risk and 10 is moderate risk, it's not even quite to the middle.
Right.
Between low
exactly.
and moderate. And I can remember your account, and it's roughly that.
Oh, okay. So now I know. Thank you.
And here you are. You're a client of mine, and I'm preaching everybody should know this, and you don't.
I don't.
Well, you know something? I guarantee you, Tracy, if I talk to any one of my clients right now, I doubt if any of them would be able to say this is what my standard deviation is.
Yeah,
so what's the message there? You should know what it is, and you should really pay attention to it. But most people don't.
We need to have. Well, you don't know what you don't know.
Yes,
and
a good one.
You need to know that standard deviation is important to how your portfolio is going to work for you as an individual. So
exactly.
I mean, I don't know. I guess I have too much trust in Fred, and
I think ultimately you have to have trust.
Yeah, that's true, and as long as it's going along, and I'm not a person who gets upset when something drops. You just sit in there and watch it, and eventually it comes back. I mean, 2000.
I remember, Tracy, a long time ago, I told you the best thing you should do is buy a house.
Right.
Okay, and you refused to buy a house, and you said, no, it's not important to me. The most important thing to me is travel.
Right.
And
exactly.
you are traveling for sure.
Well, I am. I'm getting ready to do another cruise in May, so not a long one, just a short one. But
and you used to drive a bus.
I did, and I loved my job. So it was really, really important. And then I had some health issues. I got hit by a car and stuff. So that kind of stopped my career in bus driving.
It's better than getting hit by a bus.
Yeah, no, I got hit by a car. Anyhow, I'll leave you. Have a nice new year, and we'll see you sometime in the spring, probably for an annual visit. So
I'll look forward to that, Tracy.
Okay.
Happy New Year once again. Take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, that line is now open, and again, we're taking your calls. I just pulled this up. This is an old presentation that I just updated the other day. This is when I was with another company. So when I had that header up there, I thought I'd better close it because I don't want anybody to think I'm with Regal Capital Planners. That company doesn't even exist anymore. But I worked as provincial manager for Regal a few years back. And this is a presentation that I had, and I used some of this information today. But there's a newborn baby. I clipped that out of a paper one day. On average, the life expectancy for a newborn baby is 22,463 days. Excuse me, prior to retirement. So that would be 65. Now, think about that. That's how much time you got if you're a newborn baby. And the people listening to the show aren't newborn babies, so you don't have nearly that much time. So how much time do you have left to achieve your goals? But I want to pull this one right here. I want you to really pay attention to this because it really emphasizes the value of time. If you had a bank that credited your account each morning with $86,000 that carried over no balance from day to day and allowed you to keep no cash in your account, and every evening canceled whatever part of the amount you had failed to use during the day, what would you do? I'm going to repeat that question again. If you had a bank that credited your account with $86,000, that carried over, no balances from day to day, allowed you to keep no cash in your account, and every evening canceled whatever part of the amount that you had failed to use during the day, what would you do? Well, the answer is simple. It's clear. It's almost a loaded question. It says draw out every cent, of course. Well, you haven't such a bank account, and its name, you do have such a bank account, and his name is time. Every morning, it credits you with 86,400 seconds. Each night it rules off as lost whatever this you've failed to invest to a good purpose. It carries over no balances, allows no overdrafts. Each day it opens up a new account with you. Each night it burns the records of the day. If you fail to use the day's deposits, the loss is yours. There is no drawing against the tomorrow. You can't borrow. You must live in it now. It's your daily inheritance. Invest it to get it the utmost in health, etc. Health, happiness, and fulfillment. Author unknown. There's so much wisdom in that, it's unbelievable. Yet I see this all the time. I see people, I'm surrounded by a sea of people that are doing nothing but wasting their time. And not only that, they try to waste mine too. Think about it. Let it sink in. That is the value of time. It's almost scary. You can take a lump sum investment. And we talk about rates of return. So let's say you invested $10,000 for 20 years. And your rate of return is 4%. Now you can say that's before tax or after tax, because if it's after tax, you've got to take tax off. Let's say it's after tax. So your rate of return is 4% after tax. In 20 years, you got $21,911. You doubled it in a little bit. If you get 4% more, you get 8% instead. In 20 years, you got $46,610. If you get 12% instead, in 20 years, you got $96,463. You turn $10,000 into almost $100,000 if you can get 12% on it. The little difference makes a big difference in the end. So hope that if you want the formula for that, the formula is simple. The amount invested times, in brackets, 1 plus the rate of return in brackets, and then you raise that to the power of the number of years. That's the formula. So if you got a spreadsheet, you can put that into Lotus or Excel, and it will do all the calculations for you, because that actually is a copy of an Excel spreadsheet. The graph to the right illustrates what the numbers just said. So a 2% difference makes a big difference. And you got to understand the value of time and compound interest. It's incredibly important. And most people don't do it. They say, I'm going to wait. Well, if you wait, you shorten that time period. You knock 10 years off that time period, and what? In the case of the 12% example, you cut the return from $96,000 to $31,000. You drop $60,000 by waiting 10 years to get started. That's heavy. Heavy duty, man. So you're out there, you're listening to the show. What do you think? How can you contribute to this show? What would you tell our listeners about what they should do with their money if you were to call in? 604-280-0650. Long distance, 1-877-280-0650. Log on, www.CIL650.com. Frida down at the office, area code 604-737-3512. Long distance, 1-800-661-1020. 1495, talking about your money and how to keep it, and teaching you about all that and much more. So let's say we talk about a regular investment instead of a lump sum, just a regular investment. Say $1,200 a year. You get 4%. We got the numbers here. Just I got to scroll that down a little bit here. Okay, so if on $1,200 we get 4% at the end of 20 years, we have just shy of $70,000. 30 years, I should say. 20 years is $37,163. That's $100 a month. Okay, let's say you get 8% on that. You get 8%, you got $146,815. In 30 years, in 20 years, you got $59,308. So you want to have an extra $60,000 or so in 20 years from now, $53,714. Put away $100 a month. Let's say you get 12% for 20 years. You got $96,838 in 20 years. Let's go back and look at 10 years. You put away $100 a month for 10 years. If you can get 12% on it, I'm not saying you can, but if you did, you get $32,453. So you got to understand the value of time and compound interest. And people don't. And I didn't get this message until I was about 30. They never taught me in school. I lost a lot of time. So remember, time value of money. Now, I remember when I was 18, there was a guy in my hometown. His name was Pilios. He worked for a life insurance company. And he came to my house, and he sold me a whole life insurance policy. And told me that that would make me a millionaire. I had no reason not to believe him. So I bought it, $5 a month when I was 18, and I'm going to be a millionaire. I mean, my good God, I should have been smart enough to understand that if that was the case, he'd have people lined up for blocks at his door. I want some of that too. Okay? It doesn't work that way. So anyway, the life insurance companies back in those days sold what was commonly referred to as a kiddie plan. They were insurance policies for newborn children. And so here's an example here. An insurance policy for a newborn child. If you can get 8% on the money, let's say you buy the insurance and you invest separately. You can get 8% on the money, you got $356,704 when that child is 65. You got $1,042,965, you get 10%. You got $3,160,433 if you can get 12%. Now again, when I'm just not suggesting for a single minute that any of these numbers I'm talking about are guaranteed. They're for example only. We're trying to talk about the value of time and compound interest. That was called a jumping juvenile estate builder plan. And they were designed for newborn babies. So if you had invested the $13.35 per month at those interest rates, that's the numbers. And again, it's not the amount. I can't stress it too much. It's not the amount. It's the time. Newborn babies got lots of time. Does this make sense? Does this motivate you? Does this create a burning desire to get a financial plan? If it doesn't, I've failed. Okay? So, I want to visualize. I want you to sit back in your chair right now. If you're driving your car, pull over, lean back, and visualize what you're going to look like when you're 65 or 70 or 80, whatever, financially speaking. So, can you visualize yourself in the future rich, or can you visualize yourself in the future poor? You're poor. Your pockets are turned inside out. You've got no money. Moths are flying out of your pockets and so on and so forth. You're broke, man. You got no money. or you're rich, like Donald Trump. Who would you rather be? I don't think you want to be that guy that's broke. You want to be happier? Who's happier, the guy with a big fat bank account or the guy whose bank account's overdrawn? You get your statement from the bank and you open that envelope with apprehension or with glee because you know your account's gone way up in value. Or in that it would also apply to your investment statements, anything like that. I once had a client that I went to her house and she said, I want a monthly income. So I set up her account so that she could get a check every month. About a year later, I went to her house again to review her accounts. And she said, she opened a drawer and it was full of envelopes. And she said, what are these things? I'm afraid to open them. They were checks. True story. They were checks. People fear. They fear CRA. They fear bill collectors. They don't collect their mail because they think it might be bad news. So instead of confronting the bad news, they run from it. They hide from it. That's human psychology. I learned a long time ago that my success depended upon my ability to understand others and myself. I understand myself extremely well, and I think I understand others pretty well because I made a study of it. So that's the story of an insurance policy, and there's the investment right there in 3 columns, 8%, 12%, 15%. That's illustrated in that graph and those numbers right there. Tax efficiency. I like this one. A little bigger. There's a table there. All you need to do here in this example is invest $1. That's what's at risk. So let's suppose that you go to Las Vegas. You're at the blackjack table. So you put $1 down. You're playing blackjack. I've never been there, and I don't gamble. So I don't know if you can even bet $1, but if you could, let's pretend. So you put $1 down, and let's say that if we look at the column on the right, you don't pay any tax. You put $1 down, you win. You now have $2. You let it ride. You win. You got $4. You keep winning. By the time you have won 20 times in a row, you got over $1 million if you don't pay any tax. Now, I want to repeat that. You just turn $1. If you can put $1 on the table, that's all you're risking, and you win 20 times in a row. I don't know what the odds of doing that are, but if you could, you got over $1 million. Or if you could invest $1 in something and you could double it 20 times in a row, you got over $1 million if you don't pay any tax. Now, at the time I made this table, the top tax bracket in BC was 54%. I think it was 53.7 actually. I rounded it off at 54. Let's say you put the same $1 down and you win $1, and now you got to pay 50% tax on it. So you got $1.46 instead of $2, and you leave that and you win. You got $2.34 and so on. So you keep paying the tax on that $1. By the time 20 years go by, guess what? You got $11,031.45 instead of over $1 million. No wonder the government loves you. Okay? Think about what I just said. It's the truth. If you don't believe me, get your spreadsheet out, your Lotus or your Excel spreadsheet. Do the calculations yourself. It's the truth. It's powerful. Now, you say, well, yeah, but I'm not in a 50% tax. I'm in a 40. Well, if you're in a 40% tax bracket, you got $12,089 instead of $1 million. If you're in a 26% tax bracket, you got $64,712 instead of over $1 million. That's called tax efficiency. That's why the investments that you choose have to be tax efficient. I hope that made the point. And I got another point. I have to go to the break. When we come back, we'll continue to talk about the time value of money and your New Year's resolution. I'm going to get myself a financial plan. Don't go away.
Fred Snyder.
I want you to imagine a person who is uptight, always worried, has high blood pressure, looking at their bank statement every time they turn around, and it's always red. Okay? They're spending more than they earn. They can't seem to get out of the hole. They're always telling people, I'm catching up, I'm trying to catch up. So they're always behind the 8 ball. And life isn't pretty. And they're not happy and they're frustrated. And they're not even fun to be around, those kind of people. There's a black cloud hanging over their head. Visualize that, because there's lots of people out there right now that are in that boat.
Fred Snyder.
And you have to ask yourself the question right now, what would happen if that happened to me? Because here I am. I'm sitting out here. I don't have a written financial plan. I haven't taken the time to sit down and think about my goals, the things that I really want to accomplish. I'm like a ship without a rudder. I have no direction. I'm procrastinating because I don't know what to do. And I'm still not doing anything about it. So instead of being proactive as I should be, I'm being reactive. I'm waiting for the bad stuff to happen and not controlling my destiny. If that's you, it's time to make a phone call.
Call Fred. Talk to Fred. Listen to Fred. Fred Snyder. Sunday mornings 9 to 11 on CIL 650. This is CISL Vancouver. Smooth and easy.
CIL 650.
You're listening to It's Your Money on CIL 650. Once again, here is Fred Snyder.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen and listeners out there, we are back. And again, I remind you, we are talking about your money and how to keep it. We're talking about the need for a financial plan. We're talking about the burning desire syndrome. You have to have if you had a burning desire to acquire a written financial plan, I think you'd have one, wouldn't you? If you were obsessed about having a written financial plan, I think you'd have one. Got a message coming in for a caller. The caller said the chances of doubling 20 times in a row is 1 in 1,300,000. Well, I think that's better odds than the lottery, actually. I didn't know that, but that's good. I wonder how the caller probably Googled that. Okay, a source of infinite knowledge is called Google, and I really appreciate the comment, caller. I'm going to remember that. I'll put that disclaimer on that little sheet that I have. I didn't suggest it was easy. I said if you could, and the point that I'm trying to make is about tax efficiency. That's really where it's at. It's taxes, like when you invest, the returns that you get need to be tax efficient. You have to choose investments that provide you with tax efficient returns. For example, the worst kind of income to have is salary or interest income, because you get no tax break. You can kind of get a tax break on interest if it's inside an insurance policy, universal life insurance policy, or if it's inside your RRSP, it's tax deferred. But interest income gets you no tax break. If it's outside of an RRSP, you can pay as much as 2.5% tax on interest income. So if your interest income is 2.5%, and the tax on that is, say, 50%, your real return is 1.25. Now, when you take what's left and apply inflation to that, if inflation is 3, your real rate of return is now negative. That's it. That's just pure math. So you have to get tax efficiency. If you get a capital gain and you're in the top tax bracket, and I'm using approximate numbers right now, you pay 20% tax instead of 50%. So if you can convert interest income so that it's a capital gain, you'll only pay 20% instead of 50%. If it's dividends, you'll only pay approximately 20% instead of 50%. And in the case of dividends in the lower tax brackets, sometimes you won't even pay any tax at all. Okay. So you have to be mindful. You have to be aware of how to mitigate your taxes. And sometimes you need a financial coach, a consultant, somebody like myself, to help you make those decisions and help you select the best investments. So you have a financial plan, and you look at your financial plan. Here's the key question. You just got your investment statement from one of your investment houses. So you look at your statement, and you got a list of maybe 20 or 30 securities on that statement. How are they selected? Let's say you look at your mutual funds. Is this mutual fund the best mutual fund in its category? Is it a 5-star fund, a 4-star fund, a 3-star fund? What's the mean rate of return? What's the standard deviation? You need to look at it seriously, and you need to measure all the ways that you measure a portfolio. What's the beta? What's the benchmark? How does it compare to its benchmark? You need to know all this, and yet people don't. So they come in and they say, well, I trust you, you just pick the best. That's hard to do, and it's illegal as well. Okay, so once again, number to call, ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there, is 604-280-0650, long distance 1-877-280-0650. Log on, www.CIL650.com, free to down at the office, area code 604-737-3512, long distance 1-800-661-1495. Talking about your money, more importantly about your money and how to keep it, and the time value of money. So I said earlier, and I can't emphasize this too much, that you need to make your New Year's resolution about getting a financial plan. So are you going to give Frida a call? She's waiting for you right now. Give her a call, make an appointment. Fax or email me your financial statistics, and we will do an analysis of your portfolio. You want to buy some stocks? I can sit down with you interactively and help you build a portfolio of stocks, the best stocks. I have software which is quite able to do that. I use Morningstar Advisor Workstation, which gives me any information that I need about investments. Measures all those investments when it comes to all the statistical measurements that are available. So, once again, financial plan, let's get back to that. So remember, the financial plan is the hub of your financial future. It's the center of your financial future. It's a 3-ring binder. It's got a big gold $ sign on the front of it. It says My Plan underneath that. It's got 10 sections in it. 10 plans within a plan. So we talked about cash, we talked about retirement planning, we talked about capital creation. We didn't talk enough about risk. One of the sections is risk. Risk is better defined. Maybe that tab should say, what if? What if we get flooded like they did in the United States? Gosh, that is just bloody awful. Let's talk to Helen from Richmond. Helen, welcome to the program.
Hi, Fred. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. I went to the Royal Bank and before it opened in Tawasin, and they had a billiard stand there, and it said that if you had $100,000, they could get you over $400 a month. It was $408 or something, and I made notes, and now I can't find them. But what do you think of that? Is it just eating into your capital, or what?
Well, I don't know. That needs to be expanded on.
Right.
Because, for example, you can go to the Royal Bank and buy a GIC. Probably you might get 2.5% at best.
Yeah.
So if the income is going to, that's around 5%. So if the income is going to be 5%, somehow you have to encroach on capital, because I don't think there's anything out there that's going to pay that with certainty.
Well, that's what I wondered.
I doubt it. It could be a principal protected note.
Yeah.
They're out there, and there's pros and cons to all these investments, and you need to understand that. That's Google it. That's the best way.
The other thing I wanted to ask you was, if the bonds are so low, wouldn't it be better to take the bond money and put it into a TFSA now that it's a new year and you get $5,500 you can put in?
Well, if you want safety, and if you're happy with a low rate of return, and you don't want to pay tax, that's the best thing to do. Sure, no question. So, interest income generated inside a TFSA is tax free.
Right. You just have to pick the right one.
Yeah, the right investment. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to your classes, and computer ones sound good too.
Well, if I get enough requests to do one, I think that would be a good idea, because the best thing that you can do when it comes to your money, is become very computer literate in the use of Google.
Right.
You can go to any of the banks. You can go to Scotiabank's webpage. The stuff that's on there is unbelievable. You can create your own financial plan right from that webpage. You can do the same thing with any of the banks.
Well, I listened to you your last show, and I wrote down what you said about, I forget now what it was, but I passed it on to my kids about tax savings and on the computer, the best plan for, financial planning. One of them was Navi something. And
Naviplan. Navi plan.
Yeah. Anyway, I keep saying to my kids, get her done and, get into a planner.
Well, that's, get her done. That is a real good icon.
I like that.
If you think about get her done.
Another one I tell them is keep calm and carry on. Anyway, I better go. So Happy New Year, Fred.
And the same and the same to you, Helen. I appreciate your call. You take care. Bye now.
Bye now.
Let's talk to Tim from Vancouver. Tim, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning.
My question is, if I wanted to get, or if somebody wanted to get $1,000 a month income from dividends for stocks on the TSX, how much money's worth of stocks would you have to have?
Well, your dividend depends on the amount of dividends that you get. So what you'd have to do, for example, I Googled Canadian dividend, the top Canadian dividend paying stocks, and I got a list of 10 securities on Google, and then I posted those securities into Morningstar Advisor Workstation and created a portfolio out of them, and that tells me what the blended dividend returns are on all of them, and I'd have to do the calculations, but generally speaking, on a good Canadian dividend paying stock, your dividend is going to be 3%, maybe 4%, not any more than that, the most.
Well, if you had, say, $100,000 in, I don't know, some bank stocks and maybe some oil stocks on the TSX.
Yes.
Would that give you $1,000 a month? Was that enough money to?
I'd have to do the math. That's not hard to do. But I mean, $1,000 a month is $12,000 a year. So 100,000 would have to earn 12% to generate 12,000 a year. So everything would be a ratio of that, and if some of that check that you get for the $1,000 a month is your own money, then you wouldn't need 100,000. So if you're just going on the interest income from it, you could put 100,000 in. You could draw, if it earned 12%, you could draw 12,000 a year, and you'd maintain your principal. The problem is that to get real purchasing power, you'd have to draw 12,000 the first year, and then 12,000 times 103 to inflation adjust that each year. That extra 3% comes out of your principal, and you'd run out of money in about 11 years. Okay, so you got to crunch the numbers, and you have to sit down and do that. I have computer software which will do that. And that because, like you see, we're talking about a financial plan, and in your case, you just ask a very, very good question. And so inside your financial plan, one of the objectives would be to get the numbers that you just asked for. How much would I need capital, how much capital would I need to generate after tax, we'll say $12,000 a year, or even before tax. Doesn't really matter. Depends. So you have to frame the question right. It's like using Google. You got to know how to ask the question to begin with.
So if are you telling me that after a dozen years or so, because of inflation, like if I took the dividends, the 100K would disappear?
Yes. I did a case study one time with the Canadian Association of Financial Planners. So we did a case study, and the story kind of went like this. It was a real story that this woman was recently divorced, and she went to her lawyer, and she said to her lawyer, he's willing to give me $500,000. Should I take it? And the lawyer asked her, how much income do you need? And she said, I need $50,000 a year. And at that time, interest rates were 10%. So the lawyer said, well, heck, sure, that's a good deal. You take the $50,000 a year, and you can pass the $100,000 on to your children when you pass away. It'll still be there. You won't depreciate it. But the lawyer failed to tell her that if she was going to get 10% that she could get at that time, it was only guaranteed for 5 years, as it would be in a 5-year GIC. Failed to tell her that, and if it would have been, you can look with hindsight on that advice today and say it wouldn't have worked at all, because interest rates today are 2.5 at the best. But in any event, we did the math, and we assumed that if inflation was 3%, she could get a rate of return at 10, and she withdrew $50,000 inflation adjusted, that she'd run out of money in 11 years. And she was only 50. That means she would have been broke at 61. Pretty poor advice.
Gee, that's amazing. That's a scary thought that your principal just disappears like that.
Well, but you see, it's only earning 10. That's not enough to cover the extra 3% for inflation. The extra 3% for inflation comes out of the principal, and it compounds. All you got to do, if you're good with a spreadsheet, just take an Excel spreadsheet and do the calculations. I've done them 1,000 times.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, this is why people who win the lottery and things like this, they usually there's a story I know of a fellow who went bankrupt, and the day he went bankrupt, he won the lottery. He won $1 million lottery. A year later, he was broke again. Because when people win the lottery, they think they got all kinds of money, and the first thing they do, they buy their relatives cars and houses and all kinds of stuff. It's like you win an orchard, and instead of picking the fruit, you cut the trees down. Okay. So the bottom line is what you should do. If you end up with $1 million or 10 million or whatever it is, you should invest that money in such a way that it generates an income, and then spend the income. But don't spend the principal.
But your principal would eventually disappear because of inflation?
Yes. Well, it's just straight math. Where does, like, the first year you need 50, but the second year you need 50,000 inflation adjusted at 3%. So you need 51,500. Where does that extra $1,500 come from? Comes out of the principal. It has to. The second year is still the account only earned 50, but you took out more than 50 to cover inflation. And the year after it only earned 50, but you took out even more to cover inflation. So the shortfall for inflation is coming out of the principal.
Oh, I see. Thank you for explaining that.
Well, I hope I did a good job. I found it difficult. It's a hard thing to explain. Okay. I mean, I can see the formula in my head. I know the mathematical formula, but I don't calculate well in my head. I never could. But the bottom line is, visualize the 50. You multiply the 50,000 by 103%. The first year is times 0%. The second year is 103%. The next year is 103 times 103, and so on all the way through for 11 years. And by the time you get to 11 years, your principal's down to 0. You can see it on a graph. If you draw it up on a graph, you'll see it clearly.
Oh, have you got time for one more question?
Yes.
What about if you had some money in the stocks and you wanted to protect it from lawsuits and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
Is there such a thing as putting it in some kind of trust? Is a trust another protection?
I think so. Yes, that's a call for a lawyer. But I would say that a simpler way, rather than setting up a trust, would be to buy a segregated mutual fund. A segregated mutual fund is an insurance product. So you take a mutual fund and you wrap it in an insurance cloak. And they're called seg funds, and they're offered by all the insurance companies. You got Canada Life and Manulife and Standard Life and Transamerica and so on. All these life insurance companies offer what are known as seg funds, and you can name a beneficiary. And because you can name a beneficiary, if at the time you bought that seg fund you weren't under financial duress and you later got so, that would be protected.
Because you have a beneficiary.
That's correct.
Wow, that's amazing too.
Well, that's why when we sit down, Tim, with a client, we go through what we call the client discovery process, where we ask you a whole bunch of questions. We try to understand your financial situation as well as we can. The regulators call it know your client, but it's incumbent upon us to understand what all your circumstances are, what your goals are, where you stand financially, what your risk tolerance, all that kind of stuff has to be determined. And we look for problems and opportunities in your financial situation. So that's what it's all about. And if you or anybody else out there want to make an appointment to see me, you call Frida and you reach Frida right now. This is the most important number of all of them. It's 604-737-3512. That's 604-737-3512. If you're calling long distance and you want to talk to Frida, it's 1-800-661-1495. And if you want, you can call me on my cell phone. It is 644-7526. It's area code 604-644-7526. That's 644-PLAN. Okay?
Yeah, so, I better do that, Fred.
I'll be in my car in about 5 minutes driving back to Vancouver, so if you want to call me on my cell phone, no problem.
Thank you very much.
Tim, appreciate your call. You take care. And once again, Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy 2016 to all of us.
Okay, you take care. Bye for now. Okay, I'm gone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for participating. Same time, same station. Next week. Bye for now.
If you'd like Fred to review your portfolio, call his office right now at 604-737-3512. That's 604-737-3512.